أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. First and foremost, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, first and foremost, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the favors, the bounties, the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us, and we place salawat and taslim upon the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam as a means of barakah. Alhamdulillah, just to comment on what Sheikh had mentioned about the coronavirus. One moment the Sheikh was speaking about not touching the face, and when we in Akhir Da'wana, Alhamdulillah, I paused. I didn't go further. I said, Allah, Ya Rabbi, give me maaf, because I didn't touch it. But it's really amazing how these different tribulations and challenges is placed in front of us, and the first thing we run to is the human ability to fix things. And the dose of Aqidah, in actual fact, when we spoke about actions, we spoke about Qada and Qadr to a certain degree. This now becomes the test. Who are we going to turn to first? Are we going to turn first to the medical world, to creation, in order to solve this particular challenge we have? Or have we actually turned to Allah first and then go by the tools and means? Of course, we're not discouraging people to use the tools and means. Allah has given us certain things that we use, and we're not a religion that is against medicine, of course not. But have we actually turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And how was our reaction? In actual fact, the last Jama'ah I gave about was the coronavirus, but the lessons that we extract from it, specifically how certain communities had reacted to it. I know that there was a few individuals that came to me and asked, Sheikh, I need a fatwa. I said, what is the issue? The Sheikh, is it permissible for me not to greet Chinese people? And of course it sounds funny to a certain degree, but what hit me in that moment is, this is exactly what the Muslims faced before. We are now, alhamdulillah, not on the radar that much. Alhamdulillah, the terrorist is not anymore that big and large. And when people used to see Muslims, then immediately they distance themselves. And now today, we find that there's a big commotion about what is happening in China. And subhanAllah, we find that even within our community, there is some sort of, even not direct, but little of racism within us. Because that is exactly what we are doing with these people, without even confirming whether these people have the virus. And so I even know of people that say, Sheikh, I boycott the Chinatown. We're not going to Chinatown anymore because of the virus. And the first thing that came to my mind, Ya Allah, this is exactly what we went through before, yet we are treating these people the same way. We are distancing ourselves. And even though we might explain or sort of to a certain degree, add some logic to it, to our prevention and cure and protecting oneself, but at the end of the day, Islam does not encourage undermining or degrading any human being for that matter. Because that's one of the issues that I've seen as well, especially in town, because Medina Institute is that side. And you see there's a lot of Asian people that walk around, a lot of people that do business with them, and then you see this attitude. In actual fact, we were once in Food Lovers Market, and a group of Asians came in, and you just see how everybody started distancing themselves. And then one with this, with that, and wallahi, I could feel their pain. Because there's nothing wrong with them. They look perfectly fine. But I can imagine how they feel. Because now everybody's trying to cut off or isolate them in one way. And wallahi, as Muslims, we need to actually be the last to do something like that. Because we've experienced it. We've seen it. Where people isolate themselves from Muslimin. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant that this test become a test that we actually benefit from. And not that we change our attitude in a negative, bad way towards certain situations. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant cure for all. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we deal with one of the most important topics that is debated in Aqidah. And the heading is called Al-Wa'd wal-Wa'id, meaning the promise of Jannah and the promise of Jahannam. The question that is posed, is it possible, not probable, possible, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the outcome of a person, even though he's maybe to a certain degree promised that if he does this, he will receive that, and if he does this, he will receive that. That is the whole debate, and that is the whole question. Is it possible upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change the outcome of a person even on the last minute? If a person was an obedient slave for most of his life, and at the last minute something happens, and then the person is cast in Jahannam. Or is it possible that a person for all of his life committed wrong and disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the last minute, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him Jannah? These are the questions around this. And why specifically, and it's built upon the topics that we covered before, and that is when we spoke about, is there anything compulsory upon Allah to do? Is there any wajibat upon Allah to do? Can anything dictate for Allah? Can anything condition Allah? Can anybody have any entitlement by Allah? Those are the questions that are connected to this particular topic. So Imam Al-Azhari, he starts off by explaining, he says, وَخَادِنٌ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ بَعْدَهُ وَمُنْجِزًا لِمَنْ أَرَادَ بَعْدَهُ. Literally translated, وَخَادِنٌ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ بَعْدَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place failure upon the person that distances himself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward the person and grant him his wa'ad, meaning his promise of Jannah, if the person obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Al-Bajuri, he explains first and foremost what is wa'ad and what is wa'id. We find ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah la yukhlifu wa'dah. What does the word wa'ad mean? Now literally translated, it means promise. If we translate the word al-wa'ad or we translate the word al-wa'id, both of them are translated into Arabic as promise. And that's why Imam Al-Bajuri, in actual fact, he says, Al-wa'adu lughatan an tumanna ghayraka bi shay'. The definition linguistically of wa'ad is when somebody, and of course here we talk about in general, we're not speaking about Allah, we're just dealing with the term itself. When somebody wishes something for somebody else. When you wish or you desire for something upon someone else. So you can either promise him in a good way or you can promise him in a bad way. That is the literal translation, or let me say definition of al-wa'd. It is to wish upon something or somebody with something. Right? And then he says, وَلَفْظَةُ الْوَعْدُ تُسْتَخْدَمُ فِي الْخَيْرِ وَالشَّرِّ. And in the Quran, the term al-wa'd, not al-wa'id, al-wa'd was used in many ways. He said it was used for good and it was used for bad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for instance, says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah number 9, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed He had promised for those people that believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they practice the good deeds, they practice the right deeds. Now the tafsir of wa'd there, Allah is speaking about Jannah. But then in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in Surah Al-Hajj, ayah 72, Surah Al-Hajj, ayah 72, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ أَفَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِشَرٍّ مِّن ذَلِكُمْ أَنَّارُ وَعَدَهُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, should I inform you of something that is worse than that, meaning what was said before? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنَّارُ وَعَدَهَا اللَّهُ. So the word wa'ad is used there. The word wa'ad is used there, but it's not in a good way. Because what is Allah promising there? Jahannam. So we see that the word wa'ad had been used differently. It can be used for good and it can be used for bad. In that sense, bad for us. Where on the other hand, al-wa'id was only used for bad. Al-wa'id was only used for bad. So what is the difference between the two? When we look at wa'ad, it normally and generally refers to Allah promising good for an individual. On the other hand, al-wa'id, Imam Al-Bajuri defined, huwa lid-tahdeed. It is to warn and threaten the person. It is to warn and threaten the person. So we're speaking about adab, punishment. Whether we look at it as adab on the dunya, whether we look at it adab in the qabr, or whether we look at the adab in the akhirah, meaning Jahannam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we're using the word al-wa'id, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always indicates to what? Jahannam. For instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Qaf, ayah 28, قَالَ لَا تَخْتَصِمُوا لَدَيَّ وَقَدْ قَدَّمْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ بِالْوَعِيدِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on that day, we will be debating with each other. No, it's your fault. No, you led me to do this. No, you led me to do this. No, I did not force you. No, but you manipulated me. And in that moment, Allah says, don't argue today. It's not going to benefit you today. Allah's going to say, that's not going to help you. لا تختصموا لدي. Don't come and argue by me. وَقَدْ قَدَّمْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ بِالْوَعِيدِ. When I gave you the wa'id, I gave you the warning. I gave you the threat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And so that is Surah Qaf, ayah 28. So Al-Imam Al-Bajuri, he defines al-wa'id and he says, كُلُّ خَبَرٍ يَتَضَمَّنُ إِيصَالَ ضَرًا إِلَى الْغَيْرِ. That it's every single promise that leads the person to a bad situation. Every type of promise that leads the person to a bad situation. And therefore he says, وَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى قَدْ وَعَدَ بِالثَّوَابِ مَنْ أَطَاعَهُ وَتَوَعَدَ بِالْعِقَابِ مَنْ عَصَاهُ. And Allah had promised in the Quran, whoever obeys Him, then that person will be receiving thawab, reward by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whoever disobeys Him, تَوَعَدَ بِالْعِقَابِ. Allah had promised punishment for that individual. وَالْجَنَّةُ هِيَ دَارُ الثَّوَابِ. And paradise, heaven, Jannah, it is the reward of the person that obeys Allah. And Jahannam, Darul Iqab, which is the place of punishment. Now he first explains what is wa'ad and what is wa'id before we get to that debate that I mentioned. And so therefore he now goes on and he says, فَهَلْ يُمْكِنْ أَنْ يَتَخَلَّفْ وَعْدَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ وَكَذَا وَعِدَهُ. So is it possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change that which He promised for the individual? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, obey me, believe in me, do what is fara'id upon you, is it possible that on the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change our outcome to end up in Jahannam? Or is it possible that a person that disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and comes on the day of Qiyamah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives the individual? Now there are certain signs within our tradition that indicates to both. That indicates that Allah will not break His promise, and some indication that shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not necessarily conditioned by our actions to determine where we go. And that's why we have a general understanding that we will not enter Jannah through our actions, but we'll enter Jannah through the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are not going to also necessarily enter Jahannam because of Allah's anger, but because of Allah's justice. Because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's justice, therefore a person will find themselves in Jahannam. Now, there's a hadith that is rated by Al-Hakim fil Mustadrak when he speaks about, at least the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam speaks about an individual, and even though this hadith at least can be considered as Hasan, and some of the hadithin had mentioned that this hadith is Sahih, but if we look at it, Allah, the Nabi says that on the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring two individuals in front of Him. And these two individuals, where will they be? In Jahannam. So they were judged. The judgment had been placed upon them that they must go where? To Jahannam. And they find themselves in Jahannam. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala summons them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks them to, and Allah knows, how did you find my promise? And the one says, Ya Allah, I've never ever felt anything like this before. This is the worst torment or the worst torture that I can ever imagine that I'm feeling. The other one says, Ya Allah, I would not even wish this upon my enemy. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them both, okay, now go back. Go back to Jahannam. And the one sprints back to Jahannam. And the other one stands still. And again, Allah knows what is going on, but this hadith is meant for us to understand. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then calls the one back that ran back to Jahannam, and He asked them both. He asked the one that ran back to Jahannam, he said, why did you run to Jahannam? He said, Ya Allah, because I did not obey you on the dunya, at least in the akhirah I'm going to obey you. At least in the akhirah I'm going to obey you. And the other one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked, why did you stand still? And he said, Ya Allah, I know that it's through your rahmah that you gave us these small little moments out of Jahannam. But I know, Ya Allah, your rahmah exceeds that. So He wants more. And that's why He's using it as a daleel. He's saying, Ya Allah, I know your rahmah is more than this, Ya Allah. And then the hadith tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then orders the malaika, take these two slaves and take them to Jannatul Firdaus. In another hadith, the Nabi ﷺ speaks about an individual for 40 years disobeyed Allah. 40 years disobeyed Allah. Then he came on the day of Qiyamah. Before he died, at least he ordered his sons to cremate him, even though he was a believer. He ordered his sons to cremate him. And then the Nabi ﷺ says this person is brought on the day of Qiyamah, and Allah asked him, and Allah knows, why did you do that? Why did you cremate yourself? You disobeyed me for 40 years continuously. You rebelled against me, and then you still cremate yourself? Why did you do that? So the person then responds within the hadith that's mentioned, the person says, Ya Allah, I was too ashamed to face you, even though I know you will be able to gather me together. I was too ashamed to face you, even though I knew that you can gather me together. So the Nabi ﷺ says, because of the khushu' that he shows in that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then orders the malaika, take my slave to Jannah. Now we find these signs in our tradition. We find it within a hadith, and we even find it within ayat as well. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the group in Jannah, looking at the people in Jahannam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they say, Ya Allah, you know, we knew of certain people and they were our brothers and they were with us, and now we don't see them with us anymore. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them the moment, or let me say the opportunity for shafa'ah, intercession. So then they are taken from Jahannam and placed into Jannah. So here we can see that there is some change of judgment. There is some change of the outcome. That they were promised that they're going to, if they do these things, you're going to end up in Jahannam. But then we find within our tradition certain signs that shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places him there. And then we also find signs. It's nice, it's beautiful, but there's also another sign where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about people that disobey him. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. People that disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intentionally, rebel against the order of Allah. We're not just talking about kufr here. We're talking about people that are continuously committing wrong all the time, and they're not repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the outcome, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us understanding that there will be khalidina fiha abada. Forever in Jahannam there will be. Forever. Now how do we reconcile between the two? How do we understand whether it is possible that the outcome of a person can change, or whether it's not possible? So, Imam Al-Bajuri says, اتفقت كلمة العلماء من الأشاعرة والماتريدية على أن وعده تعالى للمؤمنين بالجنة دار للثواب وعدا لا يتخلف. He says that all of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah agreed that Allah will never break his promise or change his promise with an obedient slave. Meaning, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that when we have iman and we do amal salih, then our outcome will be Jannah. Our outcome will be Jannah. So that's where they all sit. He says, majority ulama, when it comes to Jannah, there is no dispute. If you do good and you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the outcome is Jannah. But then another debate comes up with this. And that is, can we say that our actions actually then dictates and forces Allah to place us in Jannah? Because if we did good, then does that mean now it's a fard upon Allah that he must place us in Jannah? That's the next question. So what did the Ash'ara do? The Ash'ara said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he places a person in Jannah, then the person enters not because it's fard, but because of the generosity of Allah. Because of the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Simple example, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, to Allah is the highest examples. If a father promises a son, he says for instance, if you're going to pass this exam, I'm going to buy you a car. May Allah grant that for Ammar. I see his daddy sitting here. Ameen. The Jama'ah say Ameen. Good, he's studying deen, inshallah, may he pass. If he passes, we want to reward him. But now it comes at the end of the year and Ammar passes. Does it become a sort of sinful thing if Ustad Ammar does not fulfill his promise? Can Ammar in the state, in our understanding from a logical perspective, actually go to the court and have a case against his father? Does it make sense that the judge will even look at something like that? To say that my father promised me a car, I paused, he did not fulfill that promise, now please deal with him, place a judgment upon him, or throw him in jail. That will never happen. Why? Because even though the father is promising, it's not wajib upon him to do it. In actual fact, it might be that maybe the father has a better understanding, or maybe he's putting the money away so that Ammar can maybe enter into a better university later. It depends on how the father sees what is priority. So meaning that he can look at it this way or he can do it that way, but it's not necessarily wajib upon that father to give that particular gift. It's according to how he sees and how, through his wisdom that he implements, and he says, okay, yes, it's fit. Because if Ammar, for instance, he passes the end of the year, but his father knows this youngster is a wild driver. I gave him the keys the other day, he made an accident. Now I must go buy him a car tomorrow. Again, it depends on the situation, it depends on the circumstance. So the father, I'm not saying that happened to Ammar, may Allah protect him. But it depends on the situation whether the father will do it or not. But what is the point? It's not something fard ayn. It's not an absolute compulsory upon the father to do that. But if the father does it, why does he do it? Because he's generous. Because he's merciful. Because he has compassion for his son. And so therefore if he does it, alhamdulillah, he does it. So therefore when we think about Allah and us as his slaves, we enter Jannah not because it's fard upon Allah to place us in Jannah, but it's out of the generosity of Allah, and Allah is all generous. There's no doubt in that. There's no doubt that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all generous, the most generous, generosity that no creation can compare to. And because we know Allah to be like that, we will not expect any believer that does good deeds lands up where? In Jannah. Because of the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ulama had used certain ayat. For instance, Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 9, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never change the promise that He gave. Alright? He will never change the promise that He gave. In actual fact, when we recite one of the verses that's very famous, where we say, ربنا إنا سمعنا منادي ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. We say, Ya Allah, and then we start making dua. If it was fard upon Allah, the ulama says, then you would not need a dua. If Allah had no choice, if Allah was absolutely forced, then you don't have to make dua. But because we are still making dua, when we say, Ya Allah, give us that which you have promised us. Give us that which you have promised us. For Ya Allah, you indeed will never change your promise. You won't break your promise. Why are we making the dua on the day of Qiyamah? That's an ayah. The ulama says, because we are still seeking Allah's generosity. We are still seeking on the day of Qiyamah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah. Why is it so important? Because we as human beings, we have certain things that are compulsory upon us. But because Allah is the creator, if we say that it's compulsory upon Allah, that means Allah's action then becomes dictated by our actions. And creation on any level, can they dictate for creator? No, they can't. Action is a creation. Our actions is a creation. No, it's creation. Can creation dictate for creator? Of course not. Can creation force creator? Of course not. Can creation limit creator's power and will, irada? Of course not. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ. He does whatever He wishes. He does whatever He wills. لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. He is not questioned on what He does, yet they question Him. Meaning, with that, what does that ayah mean? Meaning nobody can hold Allah accountable. Can we imagine Jama'at al-Muslimin come out there of Qiyamah, Ya Allah, and we think we can hold Allah accountable? Ya Allah, if somebody has that attitude, the arrogance that is within them. If we just think about it, because nobody can say they have an entitlement by Allah. But yes, we are longing. That's what the ulama says. What should that your ibadah be? It has to be between two things. Al-raja wal-khawf. Longing and fear. Longing for what? For the rahmah of Allah. Fearing what? The punishment of Allah. So you work in your way through those two things in order to be successful on the day of Qiyamah. So therefore we find that according to the Ash'ari Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that Allah will never break His promise of what? For the people that believe and the people that do righteous deeds. Not because it's fard upon Allah, but because Allah is all generous. Because Allah is all perfect. Because Allah is all Rahim. Because Allah is all Ar-Rahman. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't break that promise. Now we come to the second, the wa'id, the promise of punishment. So the promise of punishment, is that also open to debate? So the ulama, they differ between the Ash'ari, the Maturidiyya, and some of the minorities that existed as well. What did Al-Imam Al-Ash'ari say? Al-Imam Al-Ash'ari says, and his foundation is what is his principle? There is nothing wajib upon Allah. So he then says, because there is nothing wajib upon Allah, Allah can even take the promise of punishment away. He says so. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take that promise of punishment away. What does he mean by that? I'll give another example. If the parent tells the child, I want you to study and pass this year, and if you don't pass, then this is going to be your punishment. I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to take your allowance away. But now say for instance, now the child is studying and he's doing his best, but he still fails. He still fails. Is it wajib upon that father to implement the punishment? Not necessarily. It depends. So maybe he saw in the child that the child was sincere. That the child did his best, he tried utmost best, but he could not reach to that goal. He could not reach to the objective. But he was sincere, he did his best, he tried his best, but he every time collapsed. Maybe he has this dyslexia or something, whatever the case may be, but he could not see to the goal that was placed. And so the father could then analyze that situation and say, okay, well, because I saw that sincerity within you, or maybe something else happened, maybe the child was in an accident. You know, again, we talk about circumstances. And because circumstances can differ, we know that it's not fard upon that father then to implement that punishment. But if he sees that the child was not sincere and the child did not take this task seriously, then if he does punish the child, it's not because he's trying to target the child or trying to belittle the child or trying to undermine the child, but he's showing the child what is justice. For every action there's a reaction. For every action there is a consequence to that action. So therefore, if the father does punish the child, then it's because the father is trying to teach him, this is accountability, this is responsibility. But my point being, it's not necessarily wajib. It depends. It depends on the situation, it depends on the person. Now, again, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, to Allah's highest of examples, when Al-Imam Al-Ash'ari is saying that is not wajib upon Allah, not only is he coming from the understanding that there is no wajibat upon Allah, but he's also coming to say, we don't know the state of the person in front of us. We don't know. Right? A person might be, in our eyes, the worst sinners, but maybe every single night he cries in tawbah and he actually makes salat al-tahajjud. We don't know. In actual fact, one of the Sahaba in the time of the Nabi alayhi salam, so this man, the Nabi alayhi salam says, there's a man that's going to enter into the masjid, and this person is from Ahlul Jannah. From Ahlul Jannah. So then the person enters, and who sees this? Abdullah ibn Amr, one of the great Sahabis. And Abdullah ibn Amr is then curious. So we happen the first day, second day, and third day. The Nabi ﷺ said the first day, the man that is going to enter is going to be a man of Jannah. And then this man entered. And then the next day, same thing. The Nabi ﷺ said a man of Jannah is going to enter into the masjid. And then this man came in again. Third day, exactly same thing. So Abdullah ibn Amr, he wanted to know, what is it that makes this man a person of Jannah? What is he doing be so unique and so special that the Nabi can tell him now already that this person is in Jannah. So what does Abdullah then do? Abdullah then goes to the man and he asks him, can I stay by you for a few days because I just have some difficulties at home and I need a place to stay. So the man says, Khalas, Bismillah, no problem. And Abdullah then stays with the man. And he now observes him, of course. He's trying to see what is this man doing unique and special that he's of the people of Jannah. And then he notices this man only does his 4 salahs and nothing extra. He just does his Dhuhr, he does his Asr, he does his Maghrib, and he does his Isha, and Fajr, khalas. Not even extra salawat. No salat al-tahajjud, no salat al-layl, no salat al-duha, absolutely nothing. And he was amazed, he was thinking, is this guy, did he catch me now? Does he know that I'm watching him, whatever? And he starts questioning until it comes to one day, and Abdullah comes to the man and he says, look, let me be honest with you. I actually don't have any problems specifically at home that I can't sleep there. But I came here because the Nabi told us that you are promised Jannah. And I wanted to see what is it that you do so that I can do it. So the man that tells him, I don't know, I don't do anything special. I'm a simple person, I'm an average person. I don't do anything that much extraordinary. And then Abdullah was about to walk away. The man says, look, it might be this one thing. And Abdullah asks him, what is it? He says, before I go to sleep, I cleanse my chest from any hatred or any dislike to anybody that did me wrong. I clean my chest. Meaning when I go to sleep, I have no hard feelings for anyone. And then this affirms that that was the particular action that the man did and granted him Jannah. So again, we don't necessarily see what is happening inside. We don't see the state of taqwa or iman the person is upon. A person might look like an average person, or even the worst of the worst. I'm going to give another example to show that we can't just judge a person like that. There was one great Sahabi named Nu'ayman Al-Ansari. Nu'ayman was one of the greatest Sahabas. He witnessed all the battles of the Nabi ﷺ, and he stood and he fought with the Nabi ﷺ. But according to riwayat, in the beginning, Nu'ayman had an alcohol problem. He had an alcohol problem. Now we know that according to hadith, that the sort of implementation of haram concerning khamr took some time. It first started out cutting in a little bit and then a little bit until the order of khamr was now completely haram. So there was sahabi that were drinking in the beginning. So what happens now? The order of haram comes down, but unfortunately Nu'ayman is addicted to khamr. And so he comes to the Nabi ﷺ and says, Ya Rasulullah, I drank. And the Nabi ﷺ tells him, make tawbah, never return to it again, and completely stop that. Don't ever go back. Make a sincere tawbah to Allah, ask Allah for istighfar, and make a promise to yourself and to Allah that you're never going to return. So Nu'ayman goes. There he comes later on, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I drank again. And the Nabi ﷺ tells him, go back, don't return to it again, make tawbah, and make a promise, a strong niyyah that you will never drink again. And he goes away. Nu'ayman comes for the third time back again. And Nu'ayman says, Ya Rasulullah, I drank, place the hadd upon me, place the punishment upon me. And the Nabi ﷺ tells him again, go back, don't return to it again, make tawbah and make your niyyah strong. Nu'ayman comes for the fourth time back. Fourth time back. And he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, Ya Rasulullah, I drank again. And the Nabi alayhi sallam says the exact same things again. So what happens now? Who's sitting in the between the Nabi alayhi sallam and Nu'ayman? Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Now we know Sayyidina Umar, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, we know, al-Faruq, right? He does not take play when it comes to hududillah. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu then tells the Nabi, Ya Rasulullah, you mentioned to us, and there's a hadith, sahih, that whoever drinks by the fourth time, if he does not stop, then the punishment is death. The punishment is death. And the Nabi then responds to Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, says, how can I place the punishment of death upon a person that truly and sincerely I've seen the love of Allah and the love of His Rasul is in his heart. Again, we might see certain things, but it does not mean it's the absolute picture of what we see. So based upon that, Al-Imam Al-Azhari is saying, it's possible. The person we know is drinking khamr, or is doing haram, or is fornicating, and these are the punishment that's going to lead him to Jahannam. And then is it possible on the day of Qiyamah that his outcome is different? Al-Imam Al-Azhari says, yes, it's possible. And that's why the Nabi Muhammad says in another hadith, he says, a person might say a particular word, la yaqilha bala, does not think twice about it, and it can cause him to enter, one word, enter Jannah. And this hadith is mentioned by Imam Tirmidhi. And a person might say one word, he does not think twice about it, and it might land him up in Jahannam. And we know that actions are not enough for you to enter Jannah. Why? We know the famous story of the woman that starved the cat. What happened to her? The Rabbi ﷺ said, there was a woman in the time of Bani Israel that had starved the cat in one room. She locked the cat up there, and the cat died because of hunger. And even though the Rabbi ﷺ describes to us that when it came to her ibadat, she was good. You know, we think about your salah, the siyam, and the zakah, and everything like that. She was good. But because she tortured that cat in that manner and starved the cat to death, the Rabbi ﷺ said, "Hiya finna." She's in Jannah. So again, how do we say whether the person is going to go to Jannah or whether the person is going to go to Jahannam? Nobody knows the outcome. We might at the end of our lives, even though we, alhamdulillah, Allah placed the iman in our hearts, alhamdulillah, we never know that just before the end of our life, Allah might change it. That's why we say, what? رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا. Ya Allah, don't take that hidayah away from us now that you have granted it to us. That's the dua that we make. To ask Allah to affirm that, to keep it there. Because we as creation, what is the one qaida we said? Creation, its significance is that it's subject to change. We can never know what is the outcome or where we're going to land on in that sense. That's why Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, he was laying on his deathbed and he was crying. Can you imagine Jama'ah Muslimin Sayyidina Umar, one of the Mubashirin bil Jannah? Right, he was given glad tidings of Jannah, the Ashara, the 10, and he was one of the 10. And he's laying on his deathbed, and he's crying, and his son asks him, Ibn Umar, Ya Abati, why are you crying? And he says, I don't know whether I'm going to end up in Jannah or Jahannam. That is what Sayyidina Umar is saying. That he does not know whether he's going to end up in Jannah or Jahannam, even though he has been given promise. But what does Sayyidina Umar knows? Allah yaf'alu ma yasha. Allah does whatever He wishes. But it does not mean that Allah will be unjust. We have a balance to it. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what? وَمَا أَنَا بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. I will never be unjust towards my slaves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So if we land up in Jannah, it's through the generosity of Allah. If we land up in Jahannam, it's not because Allah is oppressing us. It's not because Allah is a tyrant. No, but because Allah is just, and He's placing His justice upon us. Right? So therefore He says, Al-Imam Al-Azhari then says that it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the promise of Jahannam fi haqqi ma yasha'u min ibadihi, to whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. وَذَلِكَ لَيْسَ نَقْصًا فِي حَقِّهِ تَعَالَى. And that is not considered as an imperfection for Allah, he says. He says that is not considered as an imperfection for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is it not considered as an imperfection? Because he says, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters us through His rahmah, Allah can also pardon through His rahmah. Just like Allah enters in Jannah through His rahmah, Allah can pardon through His rahmah as well. And it will not mean that Allah is a liar. Because somebody might turn around and say, wait, then why is Allah telling us all of these things? Does that mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is lying? No, Allah has given us guidelines. Remember, Jama'ah Muslimin, we have a sharia on us. Allah does not have a sharia on Him. We have a sharia. We have to obey. We have to see to the instructions. We have to see to the commandments. That is our sharia, which is wajib upon us. But Allah has no sharia on Him. Because if there was a sharia upon Allah, then who is going to hold Allah accountable? Who will dare question Allah? I don't think any of the creation will take that chance. So therefore, when we think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His action, about our actions, we have a sharia that limits us. And that's why some of the ulama, they say, even though when we say that you're going to enter Jannah through the rahmah of Allah, it should not be a misconception to think, hey, yeah, that means I can do anything I want. If I'm only going to, my action doesn't count, then khalas, yallah, bismillah, happy-go-lucky. They say, no. So the ulama explain that. They say that if a person is going to depend on the rahmah of Allah alone and do absolutely no obedience to Allah, then this person is khasran, he is going to be at a loss. Why? Because even though, so we say that you must enter Jannah through the rahmah of Allah, but first you must be worthy of the rahmah of Allah. And what makes you worthy? Ta'ah, obedience. It makes you worthy, not entitled. It makes you worthy. Okay, now I can seek the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So without that obedience and action, then you're not worthy of the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why he says, وَقَالُوا الْوَعْدُ حَقِّ الْعِبَادِ عَلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ لِأَنَّهُ فَضْلٌ وَعَدَ اللَّهِ بِهِ الْمُطِيعَ وَضَمَّنَ عَطَاءَهُ لَهُ فَهُوَ أَوْلَى بِالْوَفَاءِ أَمَّا الْوَعِيدُ فَهُوَ حَقُّهُ تَعَالَى عَلَى الْعِبَادِ وَصَاحِبُ الْحَقِّ إِنْ شَاءَ عَفَا وَإِنْ شَاءَ أَخَذَ. He says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises Jannah to a certain degree, a person has placed in certain effort and he's become worth of the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will give him that. But Jahannam is different. Jahannam is when you are, when you are incomplete with the haqq of Allah. Right? Jannah, Allah grants us Jannah, why? Because we did what we had to do. That's our haqq. But with Jahannam, when we disobey, when we fall short, what haqq are we not giving? We're not giving Allah's haqq. And he says, وَصَاحِبُ الْحَقِّ يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ. And the person of the haqq, he has the wish, he has the choice. Either he can pardon, either he cannot. If somebody, for instance, owes me money, then I am the person with the haqq. And it's up to me. Either I can pardon the person and say, it's okay, you don't have to pay the loan back to me, or I can claim the loan from the person. Because why? I am sahibul haqq. I am the person that has a right. So when we speak about Jahannam, why are these people entering Jahannam? Because they did not give the haqq of Allah. And because Allah is sahibul haqq there, it's up to Allah. Allah is the one that is in charge of the haqq there. Either He can pardon, or either He can implement the punishment. Al-Imam Al-Azhari's point is not for us to think that it's open. All he's trying to say is, Allah does whatever He wishes. Allah does whatever He wills. But now on the other hand, the Maturidiyya had disagreed. Remember we spoke right in the beginning, when we think about Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we think about the Ash'ari, the Maturidiyya, and Ahlul Hadith. Ash'ari, Maturidiyya, Ahlul Hadith. Ahlul Hadith, the people of Hadith. So these two, they debated certain theological issues where Ahlul Hadith did not involve themselves in theology. They submitted most of the things to Allah. If you have to ask a person of Ahlul Hadith this question, they will tell you, I don't know. Allah knows best. But the Maturidi and the Ash'ari, they debated these issues. So what did the Maturidi say? The Maturidi says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must implement, even if it's on one person. Even if it's on one person, Allah must fulfill the promise of what? Khalidina fiha abada. Why? Their point is not because it's wajib upon Allah, but their point is if Allah does not do it to them, they're going to say what? That this looks as if Allah is a liar. They say if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this is the consequence of your action, and He says, Khalidina fiha abada, forever you will be in Jahannam, the Maturidiyya says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will implement the punishment even if it be on one person, at least to fulfill the commandment that He had given. Otherwise, according to them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might look as if He is lying. Might look as if He's lying. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for instance, says in Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 14, وَمَنْ وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا فِيهَا وَلَهُ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, and he goes beyond the boundaries, way beyond the boundaries, يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا فِيهَا. Allah will enter him where? In the Jahannam. In Jahannam, and he will be forever there. وَلَهُ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. And he will have a severe punishment. So they say that there has to be fulfilled. Because if Allah does not fulfill it, that means, according to them, Allah is a liar. Allah is not a liar. Allah is not a liar. So because Allah is not a liar, they say Allah will fulfill that. But even if it be on one individual, let's make dua, it's not one of us. But now the Ash'ari, I'm going to end up with this point. They responded to that. They said that just because Allah had said something and He does not fulfill it, especially the Jahannam, does not mean Allah is a liar, but it means that Allah is generous. Like I gave the example of the father. The son is, I don't think any son will turn around if the father had promised him a punishment, or a daughter, that if you do this, this is going to be consequence. I'm going to cut you off. The day that comes on the day they fail, but they did their best. I don't think any son, and the father says, no, it's okay, you know what, I saw your sincerity, it's alright, I'm not going to place the punishment. I don't think any son or daughter is going to, no, Abi, implement the punishment. Cut me off. I don't want allowances. I don't think nobody will do that. Right? We're not going to turn around and say, Abi, you are a liar, or Abi, you are a liar. Why are we not going to do that? Because it has nothing to do with lying. It has to do with what? Generosity and pardon. Generosity and pardon. So the Ash'ari said what? If Allah pardons a person, that even though it's mentioned that this is his outcome, it's not because Allah is lying, but because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is generous. So it's nothing about the topic, it's nothing about lying, but it's about generosity. Right? And this was the response that the Ash'ari had given to the Maturidiyya. There was only one person in the whole history of Muslim scholars, and I'm going to end up with this point, that ever came up with this statement, this claim, and this is the last one. Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah was the only one that said that Jahannam can come to an end. Jahannam can come to an end. What did he base it upon? The holistic view of the Rahmah of Allah, and also based upon that both Jannah and Jahannam is creation, so they're not everlasting as Allah is everlasting, that's not subject to change. But he was the only one, and in actual fact, some ulama that made him, astaghfirullah, I'm not giving that fatwa, but some ulama made him kafir because of that statement. Why? Because he's going against an ayah that says, Khalidina fiha abada. And he was the only one. So he is the minority of minority of minority, one individual out of thousands of ulama. But is it possible that Allah can pardon? Yes, that's another debate. But to think that Jahannam is going to come to an end, if we do say that, then it goes against the ayat that we find. Then it goes against the ayat that we find. So we will end off the inshallah ta'ala because I see the time is over. Maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes just for any Q&As, inshallah ta'ala, and then we will immediately start with inshallah. Is there any questions?